Hello and welcome to the Overwatch 2 difficulty tier list for May of 2025. Now, let's get right into it. Come on, Freya's not that hard. Like, she's so broken. Like, what's hard about her? Bro, Aqua's not even out yet. How can he be hard if you can't play him? He's unplayable. And yeah, the tier list looks pretty good, but I feel like we're forgetting someone. Oh yeah, I forgot. Now it's perfect. Alright, so memes aside, guys, let's actually get right into the list. Again, this is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I am just a regular, humble Masters player who happens to coach the game a little bit. And I do play characters that are just a little difficult. Just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit more than the average character. So that, and also I do play a lot of Echo, so I do spend a lot of time playing other characters, surprisingly enough, so that I can brush up on my ult mechanics. So I do know a little bit of what I'm talking about, not too much, but hey, you know, let's see, average Joe opinion, if it stacks up to how the all the big dogs talk about the game. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So in the D tier, this is the most piss easy, brain dead, no IQ characters in the game. Full screen this, why not? We got Moira, and we got Torbjorn. So for Moira, there isn't much in terms of execution that you have to do at all. So your damage ability tracks for you. Your healing ability has a large radius with really no... You can't go wrong with messing it up. Like, there's really not that much to mess up on Moira besides your positioning. And even then, you have Fade on a very low cooldown that can allow you to get out of jail for free. Whereas other supports, you get punished for bad positioning way harder. And they're not able to put out as much from a numbers perspective and survive for nearly as long as a Moira can. Consistently, right? Unless they are a very strong player. So for this tier list, I think instead of just describing it difficulty with a vague, one size fits all, one brush on with one color on a canvas, painting the picture with one brush, we should define it through value ceilings, where your value on the character at a base level of competency, what is that, right? So, like, how good can you be by being decent and, like, knowing what you're doing with the character? And for Moira, you can get to that point the quickest out of probably any hero in the game, to be honest. And still, like, even though you're not doing too much, achieve a base floor of value that is way higher than anyone else on the list, and more importantly, way easier. I think, like, there may be only a couple other characters where at base level of competency you will get more value on, just off of the nature of, like, support as a role. How it's, like, it's a little bit difficult to carry on it, and she doesn't have, like, outwardly crazy numbers or anything that's, like, flashy or in your face, like just a hit scan, getting 2 picks randomly, then change the entire fight, right? Like, you don't have massive agency on a game like you would on another character, just off of the nature of support. It's kind of like a trade-off. There's less accountability on your end to do anything from an offensive utility standpoint. Don't let the TikTok Moiras confuse you, but at the same time, you're not worried about killing anything, but you have, like, a lot of healing utility, so, and you don't die, so it's just easy for you to supplement other people trying to carry for you. So this isn't a ranked about, or a tier list about how well a character does in ranked, but just in terms of how easy they are to play, I'm gonna go off on a limb and say the Moira is easily the easiest character in the game. But not too far off from Moira and following suit is Torbjorn. And I think that from a team play perspective, there could be an argument to move him a little bit further up in the list. But for me, I find his game plan to just be too simple and easy to execute while also being effective to really justify putting him higher up. So what does Torb have that we would consider easy? Well, he has auto-aim in the form of his turret, which also counters flankers, which punish you for having bad positioning. So these three things together, if you just plant a Torbjorn on high ground, on a lot of different maps that are hard to push, and again, Overwatch is a little bit of a problem where there are plenty of maps with a heavy defender's advantage, with a really oppressive high ground or flank routes that are difficult for players to realistically achieve and execute on without the help of a team. And sometimes in ranked, you're not going to get a team, right? So breaking the Torb stack on, say, I don't know, Junkertown, Numbani, Dorado, any of these maps where it's difficult to access him, he becomes second to Moira, the most obviously like easy character in the game. You place your turret to where you think a flanker is realistically going to come, and then you just shoot your turret and repair it sometimes, maybe move it sometimes, and then your M1, M2 for M2 when a flanker gets on you, M1 for range, and then you have a really forgiving defensive cooldown in the form of your overload, which also buffs you like tremendously. You have a small hitbox, more or less. Like he is pretty wide. He's a hefty guy, but he's also, you know, he's Lars height. He's Lars height, pretty diminutive. So it's pros and cons with him. Very easy to use spacing ultimate. You just throw it on a point and no one can use it for 10 seconds. You know, he's really straightforward and very rewarding. Very good on defense, though. One thing that might push Torb up is that he's not nearly as strong on attack maps. There's a whole meme about the attack Torb in the Overwatch community, where there's just a one-trick Torb on your team, and regardless of the situation, they play him no matter what. Payload Torb, basically. But aside from that, he's just kind of doing the same thing every game. I don't know if that's enough for me to justify it. So the next tier is the easy tier. Yeah, we only have two heroes who, in my opinion, are genuinely brain dead to play in the game. And the first character that I'm going to have in this list is Reaper. Now, the only thing that could put Reaper a little bit ahead is the fact that he's so simple, and by proxy of him being so simple, it makes him weak. So I don't want to, in good faith, say that a character being super simple or barred by their ability to play the fundamental aspects of the game, he can't poke, he doesn't have very good movement cooldowns, he's like a shotgun hero, sure, but like he lives and dies by that shotgun. I don't think the perk that gives him range really does that much for him. It's still Reaper at the end of the day. So I can't justify putting a character that has a limited skill set in a high difficulty just off of the premise that they can't play the game like everyone else does. Because in reality, when you're executing the game plan of Reaper, what Reaper wants to do, which is go in, flank, deny a tank shred, maybe get a kill, get CDs out, fade out, or TP in, whatever, blossom. It's really easy to execute in terms of fingers, like hand, like how hard do my hands hurt. He's really easy to play in that sense from a mechanical standpoint. But because he's so limiting, he does require a little bit more game sense than the other two below him. So I have to give him a little bit of credit. But really the crux of Reaper is either you stand inside of your team against dive and somebody comes in and you mark them, whether it be Genji, Winston's, Tracers, dink them in the head, fade if you need to, and then play a more defensive role. Or on maps where you maybe have more stationary hit scans and stuff, you want to look for a flank opportunity yourself. You go, you shoot your shotgun, and you leave. It's super simple, very repeatable gameplay loops, not much execution, very forgiving to play with high HP pool and lifesteal on his lifesteal passive on his guns. So yeah, he's not as easy as these two, but definitely not the hardest character in the game by any stretch. I'd say following suit is Roadhog. Same boat as Reaper, really simple game plan. He's held back by how limiting he is as a character. He's just looking for that hook, and that's kind of it. and he's like a little bit tanky, but really selfish and doesn't provide that much to the team. And I mean, yeah, he has that perk, but it's still not enough. It's just, yeah, the breather perk doesn't really do him that much justice from a gameplay nuance depth perspective. It's nice to have, but it's still Hog at the end of the day. But again, this is not a ranked tier list. This is nothing official. This is just difficulty, right? And Hog is really simple to play. There's one form of execution in his hook. You throw a trap, you get the hook, and you get a kill, right? If you don't, then you de-peek them for 5 seconds. That's kind of it. And you're pretty forgiving. As long as you're not playing against Ana Zen, that is, or Ana Kiri, or anything that just either A, displaces you, or B, makes your hook impossible to land, or actually get a kill from it realistically. Or C, in the worst case scenario, you are a tank, but you get exploded, and you just die for existing in a general space. And then having to find a way to play around that. I think he's a little bit harder in Reaper in that sense, because he gets countered by more characters innately in the game. And you feel it a lot more as Hog. So, yeah, I would put him one spot above. Next, we have Orisa. Very simple tank. Little bit of a poke brawl hybrid tank. You can spam. And you have at leisure, you can choose do I want to go in versus do I want to hold my position and just shoot, right? Whereas other characters, let's say a Reinhardt, he lives and dies by the position that he takes. Either he's swinging or he's shielding. And like, you don't really count Fire Strike as an effective poking tool, right? So a little bit of flexibility in positioning, the first character on this list with that. And what comes with that is a little bit more ease of use, because you don't have to live and die by the positions that you take. And she also has a movement ability in her E that also doubles as a mitigation ability, so you can easily like eat an ability and then run away with it to reposition quickly in the event that you do fuck up. Golden, another mitigation ability. Not really get out of jail free card, but definitely makes you more innately tankier. And Javelin is a really easy win condition. All you have to do is hit it. Just hit it on a wall and watch as your DPS follows up and you kill everything, right? So Orisa, not too difficult, simple game plan. It's quite forgiving. Usually tanks are on the more forgiving side. It's simple to learn, really rewarding at a base level of competency, but this is a character that a lot of people use as a crutch, as bad players, when anything goes wrong, they use Orisa because she can't beat wrong, because she's a safe pick. And so for that reason, you'll see a lot of Orisas play her horribly, thinking that she is the most braindead character in the game for some reason, even though you still have to land your abilities and be competent in Overwatch from a positional standpoint, game sense standpoint. And so you see her feeding a lot, and so that creates this little narrative in players' minds that maybe Orisa is harder than she actually is. No, she is piss easy, let's be real. Alright. Next we have the hit scans. I'm just going to throw all the ones that I think are deserving of being here. So we have Soldier, Cassidy, and then I think we're going to give Ashe B tier, but I'm going to put her there right now, and I'm going to go through her later once we get to that point. But for Soldier, he is a general all-around character. He's decently good at about everything that you would want from a DPS character. He has poking from range. He has a hit scan weapon, a hit scan type weapon at least. I'm not sure if it's actually hit scan or not, but 0.5 seconds, whatever, travel time for a projectile. Like, he's not projectile, at least. We can say that much. Good, high damaging, easy to use ability in the form of rocket. Decent win condition in his visor, because a lot of abilities now from the support category, like Bap Window, Juno Ray, Ana Nano, Kiri, they complement the visor really well. So before, this ability wasn't nearly as good, plus you can headshot in it now too, which I forgot to mention. Makes it so that he has a decent win con ultimate for ranked or just for general play. He's a low rank killer because of his ease of use, so he doesn't require as much mechanics, although you do need to track on him, as opposed to characters who are above him and hit scans who are above him. And he's really simple to just use and pick up and play. You throw a healing station when you're low, you sprint around, maybe you go on a flank, little mini off angle, you use your first opening 5 to 6 shots of your gun, and then fire a rocket at someone's feet, or vice versa if it's a tank, because the rocket, for those who don't know, shreds armor, so you want to rocket the tank first, then shoot them. Regardless, that's kind of the same gameplay loop going on over and over again with Soldier. And that's going to be a common theme with a lot of these characters in the lower tiers, is they just spam one game plan, and there isn't much nuance in what angles they're able to take, or what duels they're able to take. The gameplay feels relatively similar from game to game, versus the higher characters, spoiler alert, Genji, Ball, Tracer, characters that you would expect. Every game feels drastically different from the next, and you have to really lock in on your positioning and cooldown usage, mechanics. Like, there's so much you have to think about. Versus characters like these, it's very general. Next we have Cassidy. He's, the way that I like to compare him is he's just like kind of a hit scan version of Torbjorn in a sense. You AFK in a specific spot of the map, defend your backline from flankers with your nade. You have a little bit more flank potential in the form of your role, and the fact that you are number one, hit scan weapon. Number two, quite nice middle ground between tanky and not super immobile. And you can 2-tap people. So offensively, he is a lot more of a threat than Torbjorn. Defensively, he does not have a turret, but nade does give you a way to dissuade flankers. So you play generally a very defensive playstyle. Look to poke out the tank. If the tank is above 300 HP on a dive character, you are trolling as Cass. In poke mirrors, you're just shooting shields all day, and Cass has excellent shield break. Very easy shield break. You don't have to aim. You just shoot at the shield. And shooting big targets on Cass can get you value. Same thing with the majority of hit scans in this game. And he has a very forgiving weapon in his Peacekeeper revolver. 6 shots. Shift. You get another 6 shots, so you don't have to reload basically at all, especially once you get the major perk. That gives you the reload. Not reload, what's it called? It gives you shift on a lower cooldown every time you hit a headshot, which you can easily farm with bigger hitbox characters. And yeah, he also has right click, very good shotgun. So he has a shotgun, he has long-ish range, at least opposed to the majority of the cast. He's a medium close range hit scan, but he still has good range. An okay spacing ultimate. It's not horrible, but it's not great. Well, hey, his neutral is just so strong that we'll take it. Good shield break, really tanky. He kind of just does it all for a hit scan, minus like it's a little immobile. So in that, he doesn't have any real holes in his gameplay. At least at like the lower levels of play, maybe in like super duper high level pro play, you can isolate a cast for 6 seconds when he doesn't have roll, and you can like all in collapse on him, and he only has a single target ability for both of his abilities. Roll is a one-time use. Nade is realistically only going to hit one person, or is going to save it for one person. So if 2 people dive him, then it's a little bit harder than some of the characters below him. But aside from that, again, he's still a pretty relatively easy character. I forgot to put Bastion here. I will put Bastion around the same spot. Bastion, a little more, I would say, forgiving from a mechanic standpoint than these two, Soldier and Cass, but a lot more forgiving from a mechanic standpoint. But like in terms of his overall survivability, it's quite weak because he's so immobile and his hitbox is so big and he's so frail. And it doesn't matter that he has that healing passive now, because all it takes is a little Ana anti or a Sombra hack plus virus combo, or a Tracer pulsing him with a massive ass hitbox, or Cass running in and double fanning him, or like if you breathe on Bastion, he'll die to the majority of the cast in the game. But the trade-off is that his poking with his shift is so easy and so effective for how easy it is against any type of a shield or any tank that has moderately low sustain, be it Monkey. They can play around it well. I'm not saying it's unwinnable, but Monkey, Doomfist, even like Hazard, even though Hazard has wall, even Hazard, Zarya, force a bubble out really easily, just very easily force a bubble out. And his grenade is good at isolating and killing squishy targets and repositioning for high ground. So a little bit of flexibility in positioning. But he's also only really looking for one thing, and that one thing that he looks for is very easy to do. So for that reason, I can't put him any higher. Next, we're going to have Junkrat. Again, kind of the only thing you could argue is that he's hard by nature of being bad. He's kind of just a silly hero. You're looking to isolate someone in a closed, encapsulated room, kind of like a sim with her turrets, and just spam your gun and your mine and get a one-shot. His poking is decent. His ult is okay. And yeah, he's just not much gameplay depth outside of weird stuff that you can do with concussive and creative trap placement. And now we're going to start with the B tier. So these are average difficulty heroes. They're not going to be outwardly super difficult, but there are things about them, whether it be how different abilities interact with each other and with the other members of the cast. Maybe they can only position in one certain way, which forces them to they're boxed in to play a specific way, kind of like the characters in C tier, but a little bit more mechanics potentially. Maybe harder to use ult, or maybe there's like a specific something that they're looking for that is different from everyone else. Let's say like a Mei Wall or Lifeweaver pulling people, so they have to play the game in a very unique way, but that way isn't hard. Or they just have more nuance in their kit than the characters below them. So starting off, we have Ashe. Ashe is everything that I said about the previous couple of hit scans, except because she's a medium to long range hit scan, she's not as effective from close range, and it's a little bit easier to get a flank play on her because of that, and so you have to match your positioning to the situation for the map and be thinking about that a little bit more than you would these other boots on the ground hit scans. You have Coach Gun, which can be used in a lot of slightly different ways, and you have Dynamite, which is a game changer of an ability and requires a little bit more thought and a little bit more effort than the characters below her. Still not too much. Also Bob placement, I forgot to mention that, Bob placement. But other than that, run-of-the-mill hit scan, just a little bit of a higher skill floor than the hit scans below her, and for that reason she gets the bump up to low B tier. Next we're going to do Baptiste. Baptiste is kind of the support equivalent to all of the hit scans. So there is some mechanics in weaving in his right click and his left click. When do I do it? When do I do 2 shots of M1 versus 2 shots of M2 into the left click, weaving in those abilities together. Placing your healing, remembering that the arc is the same as the immortality field, so immortality field placement as well. Timing the immortality field. These are things that other characters, from a timing perspective, besides general plays like flanks and off angles and peeling, don't have to worry about. So with Bap, there's a little bit more nuance now that we have to do all this like mechanically intensive hit scan stuff, but also peel and heal for our team. And he has an offensive ability in the form of window, and he has exo boots, which allow you a little bit more flexibility in positioning, which is hard and easy in their own separate ways, which I'm sure you guys recognize. But other than that, he's kind of just like mechanically a little harder than your average support, but abilities are pretty straightforward. Shift heals you, E throws an immortality field and you won't die in it. It's just a matter of like timing, like just being a good player mechanically, and you'll like shoot the ranks up in BAP regardless of meta, even if the character isn't as strong as he was previously, kind of becoming obsolete by Juno. Again, this tier list is not about ranked or how good they are, it's about how easy they are, but rather how easy it is to get the value at competency. So yeah, BAP and B next to the rest of the hit scans, but a little bit harder because there's more you have to think about, right? So next we're going to have Zenyatta. Zenyatta, I kind of want to say he's in a similar light to Ashe, medium to long range. You have really good tank shred in the form of Discord and left click. But most of the time you're playing Zen on these longer range poke maps and orbing a DPS on an angle and kind of forgetting about it. So mechanically he's intensive. Positional wise, he's difficult to position with because of how squishy he is on some maps. On circuit and maps that have long sightlines, it's really Havana. It's Dorado. It's really not that hard to position as Zen. You just kind of AFK on height, and your kill box is so much stronger than the enemy team can realistically break it, that positioning doesn't matter as much until you get to the higher ranks where flankers will actually punish you for the way that you play. But on the majority of the maps, Zen is very easy to isolate and kill, so you have to be on top of it in terms of positioning, or you just have to outplay the opponent, in which case that is contingent upon player skill and ability to hit shots, right? So Zen, there isn't really a crutch for him, especially after so many nerfs to Discord, where you could, before, in the past, you could just Discord a tank and kind of be done with it and just like leave everything, say la vie, and live your life and still get value on the hero, and then orb a tracer on an angle and then go about your business. Now there's more of a precedent upon hitting your shots and having personal agency with Zen, because Discord is more so used as a way to 1v1 people and flip it between target to target instead of just throwing it on a target and then calling it a day, right? So nowadays, Zen a little bit harder. Still not super difficult, but I really like Zen. I hope he gets better. He's really fun to play. He should be harder. I hope one day he gets... I mean, maybe there's a little bit of flexibility in positioning with his new perks, which allows him more avenues to open the opponent up or reposition as he pleases. Does it make him a little bit easier? Yes, in some ways. In other ways, it gives you more things to play with, more tools. So, I'll keep him in the middle for now. Maybe we'll get back to him later. This is where I think he is right now, for me at least. Next, we have a character that people would not expect to be in this tier, but I personally, after being convinced by a fellow Mercy enjoyer, is actually not a piss easy character. Not hard by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot more nuanced than people like to give her credit for. So before you go and crucify me in the comments, non-Mercy mains, for saying, oh, well, this character is braindead, all you have to do is hold M1, M2. I know that Spylo puts her in FD / like Moira tier, which I don't understand. I feel like that's such a leap of faith. And kind of dealing in absolutes in a sense where just because the character on like 2 maps in the game can kind of like AFK behind a wall and pocket a hit scan, which you're only going to get like a good hit scan player in like the optimal environment to play a braindead Mercy in, maybe like 10 out of your 100 games in ranked, like an unrealistic, like I'm talking about on average, how hard is a character to get competency with, right? And for Mercy, I feel like her game plan is unique enough, and the way that she plays the game is so contrary to other heroes that just off of that principle, it puts her above these characters that don't have to think at all to get a baseline value, right? And yes, you can pocket someone on an angle and kind of just exist, and if the pocket is good enough, then you don't have to do that much. But there is, the higher up you go, so much that you have to worry about on this character. You have to pocket for your DPS. You have to get mad because your team is asking for heals in all directions and you're a single target healer in a ranked environment. Or even in pro play. You have, in the rare occasion that she's picked, you have no support ultimate that is like largely beneficial to your team, very selfish ability. No defensive ult, basically. So you keeping the team up is contingent on A, your team surviving and being good, and B, you keeping them up with your skill from the neutral playing the character. C, she is very easy to isolate and dive, even if she has mobility. And the way that you survive, instead of just killing someone in a straightforward way, like a Zen, Baptiste, they can peel for themselves, you have to either call for help or you have to escape, which is hard, which requires movement, which you can tell from a Mercy who plays 0 hours of the character versus a Mercy who plays 1,000 hours of the character, who is better. Versus when I watch a Moira, like me, like if I were to be like, let's say a GM player, and I had 2 hours on Moira, compared to a Masters / like high diamond Moira with 1,000 hours, you cannot tell the difference. I'm sorry. And if you do tell the difference, it's not in a good way. It's because the Moira player is playing extremely bad, right? So Mercy, I just think, gets a lot of hate from the community for just being her. Do I think it's rooted in misogyny like these like Twitter Mercy players think? No. But I think there's this whole subculture that the character is really easy to play just because she doesn't require that much aim intensity compared to other characters. But off of that, off principle, the fact that you have to do so much else in terms of like a game sense, positioning, this weird res tech, like super jumping, using your GA properly, not messing it up, all these like 70 different Mercy keybinds and settings that make it hard for her off of default that you have to know. Playing around with your sense, like when to heal versus when to DPS. The fact that she actually, despite being a healer, is a character, support, not healer, is a character that wants to have DPS or what's it called, damage boost on the blue beam the majority of the time, 60-40, if not 70-30. And all these nuances, res, the new perks, GA cooldown, the res perk that gives you the flash heal, all of these things come together to make her coherent, cohesive, but also flawed, and you have to play around that. And very fragmented. There's only some. There's a certain way to play her, but it's contrary to the way the rest of the characters play the game. So picking up Moira, you're not going to get any better at Mercy from picking Moira. You're not going to get any better at Mercy from playing Baptiste. Whereas a lot of other characters that are easy have transferable skills that apply to the next character. She is just so unique. She's like almost like the wrecking ball of supports. I don't want to go that far because Ball is like very mechanically intensive and also unique. But Mercy, solely off of being unique and also having a little bit of tech, be it not that hard, but you do have to put your reps in, and just her being so different. Again, long segment on Mercy, but genuinely I think she's just one of the most misunderstood characters in the game. It gets her a B tier placement for me. Not because she's bad. Okay. Next I have Venture. Venture, pretty simple to use. She plays the generic flanker playstyle, but she has a lot of flexibility in that she can literally burrow underground. She's not super aim intensive. She just kind of, and she's pretty tanky too. Simple to use ult. She just kind of executes the flanker style, Doomfist, all Doomfist, DPS Doomfist style. Isolate a target, kill them, leave. Does it a little bit better than Reaper can. Does it in a way more OP way than Reaper can. I hate Venture personally, in my opinion, from a gameplay perspective. But at the same time, I also realize that flanker style playstyles are a little bit naturally, just off of nature being projectile, not having like innate DPS value, are more like positionally / game sense dependent for you to get value on. So for that reason, even though it's kind of like a Genji Tracer, Sombra, Doomfist, old Doomfist playstyle, but just without all of the hyper mechanics. Like, yeah, there are combos, but like, come on, it's left click with a million range into right click or into burrow, into jump, into shoot, and then leave. Like, it's not that difficult, right? Like, it's almost like playing a tank on DPS, you know? So, Venture, I'm not going to put super high, but I'm not going to put super low either, kind of middle of the pack. Some people overrate this character, some people say she's one of the easiest characters in the game. I try to meet somewhere in the middle, right? Let's see. Illari is weird. She's kind of like Mercy in the sense that she's unique, but not super difficult. You throw Pylon next to you, preferably on an angle. Ideally on an angle that most supports you want to play opposite side. Illari, sometimes it's actually good to play where the DPS want to flank so that you can dissuade them from flanking alongside your Pylon and maybe a stationary hit scan like a Cass or Ashe. Or you can go opposite side of the map, throw your Pylon down, AFK there, your team creates a kill box around the Pylon, and you just exist and you do damage and you're a threat and you also kind of can't die, kind of. Once some characters and teams are able to play around the Pylon, she can be a lot more challenging and you have to be more creative with your Pylon usage. Look for all the spots where it's difficult to contest it. Be in a spot where you can reliably shift away if anything happens to you. And you have to land your shots because she is a DPS support. Her healing output is not very high. She is contingent on angle control and on doing damage and getting picks, which the majority of supports don't have to worry about. It is a playstyle shift, a learning curve to playing the character. But for a baseline level of competency, it's point and click. It's the camera shot, you know, with Illari. Only other thing that I could think of being moderately nuanced is how do I use my ult versus abilities like Suzu, where it's very easily countered. Do I use it for a CD trade? Or do I use it for mobility purposes because I can fly in it? And when do I +1 on an angle for like a flanker? When do I go with my team? When do I play it more far back? These are general positioning things that every player has to worry about, so I can't, in good conscience, put her a little bit up because of that. Though I will say she does have to think about it a little bit more sometimes when she's not AFK on Pylon. Zarya. Zarya is only in the B tier and not lower, solely off of the fact that you have to, at higher levels of play around your teammates when you use bubble. So Zarya, and granted they've tried to mitigate this a little bit with the advent of perks, is difficult to access high ground with. And for that reason, you want to be bubbling your Genjis, your Tracers, kind of, not really. Tracers, like, okay. Echoes, Ventures. In 6v6, she becomes really brain dead because then it's 6v6, you have 2 tanks, right? But DPS characters that can access high ground for you are going to be doing a lot of the tanking innately for you. And it's kind of a symbiotic relationship where both of you guys are benefiting. Let me know in the comments if I got that right. Is it symbiotic? I think it's symbiotic. You bubble the Genji gets charged for you. The Genji also gets to be super tanky while he makes a play and allows him to aggress on a position he already wants to be at. So both of you guys win, win-win situation. Again, hyper focusing on this example, but it could be an Echo, it could be a Venture, whatever. They're doing the high ground control for you, and if they're not there, then you have to go up with your slow little Zarya feet until you get the major perk, which allows you to contest a little bit more high grounds. Not all of them, but a little more. And it makes it difficult for you from a space control perspective. But outside of that, Zarya is kind of Thanos, if you really think about it. You have 2 defensive cooldowns either for yourself or for your team. You're decently high HP off tank. Obviously, you're tank, but you're one of the lower HP tanks, but still decently high HP. You have a good win condition in your ultimate. It's not fantastic, but it gets the job done. And another win condition from the neutral in high charge. Zarya or high charge, I see all this like A10, all these content creators saying we bubble for space, not for a charge in Overwatch 2. In the context of ranked, where you're not always getting a teammate that will go to high ground for you, that is the biggest lie I have ever heard in the Overwatch scene. You absolutely bubble for charge on Zarya. You are the carry in ranked games. You can go out and just kill stuff and be like at lower levels of play. It is unbelievably easy to get good value on Zarya, provided you know what you're doing. Again, provided you know what you're doing. And other than that, it's kind of just her being immobile and like tracking on a tank character that would make her any hard. So outside of some of the pitfalls of bubble and how you have to be reliant on teammates for that, which you can't control, and so you have to be a little bit creative, and that she's immobile and that she has like a little bit of like some flaws in her kit, she's pretty damn easy to play, and she's very, very, very one of the most rewarding characters, if not the most rewarding in the list so far. If you are good at her baseline level of competency, you can get pretty good value on Zarya. Okay. Like, she is the tank that off-tank players play when they've had enough and they just want to win the game. That tells you a lot about her. Next to her, we have Rammatra. I'm actually going to put him 1 peg down. I think he has a little bit more flexibility in positioning with his mobility in the form of his shift. He has a faster move speed while in it, so he can get in and out of a fight, usually in. Brawl tank likes to go in. High HP. A block, which gives him more flexibility in positioning because you don't get hit for anything. You take 10 damage from the front, and you can easily turn your camera around and get that mitigation from behind again, right? So, very forgiving from an HP perspective. He's a little bit nuanced because you have to know the dynamic between when do I play neutral in the Omnic form versus when do I play in the punchy big guy form, right? Nemesis. Ultimate's really easy to use. You just use it in an area. Little bit nuanced because if they run out, then you run out of your ult, right? So you have to play around. Is my Lucio speeding me in to make a rotation to make the play work so that I'm inside of them, not ulting into them versus ulting on top of them with Rammatra? Are they playing characters that can easily escape the ult? Yada, yada, yada. Are they playing characters where I get punished if I walk too far forward and just go punch bot, expecting to get value because I'm big and I'm beefy and I see the opponent, I see red, so I want to kill them, right? And then you get punished, you get slept, you get naded, you get Discord orb, and you just explode, right? These are common problems with Rammatra players' positioning that gets them killed in ranked games because they think they're stronger than they actually are in a given situation, including myself included, because it is a little bit weird positioning with Rammatra sometimes. It's not super straightforward. But aside from that, a mechanical standpoint, completely brain dead, no mechanics whatsoever besides kind of tracking your left click and Omnic, not really. And hitting your punches, which, like, come on, guys, it's a massive projectile. Like, the range is huge. Medium range, very solid, like 10-meter-ish range. You don't even have to like punch them. There's a aura, the purple aura that comes out of the punch that extends the punch range. And the hitbox for it is also massive. So we're not really worried about that. Vortex, I guess, is a high skill ability to use in some situations, but you're mostly using it to cut off a choke and like against highly mobile characters like Genji, wall climb, deny that. Echo flying, Pharah flying, throw them, the hero fantasy, throw them out of the sky, run up, kill them, or displace them so that your team can. That's like decently high skill, I will admit, but at a baseline level of competency, you are not doing that, nor is it happening nearly as often enough to the point of like harder characters, spoiler alert, Genji, Tracer, Echo, where those types of situations are happening all of the time instead of 1 in 100 situations where we should be using the E, where it doesn't justify putting him higher just because he has a couple of times where he could be hard. Versus other characters, they are hard by existing, by nature of them, right? So Ram, I'm going to put in B. Not super hard, not super easy. A little bit harder than people give credit for, but still kind of like Orisa, it's still easy. Still. Okay. Rounding out the B tier, we have Kiriko. Now, Kiriko is a weird one because she has excellent space angle control, excellent DPS, excellent utility, excellent across the board, to be honest. The only thing that is really holding her back is not having nearly as strong as an ult as Juno does. Not having nearly as strong overall healing output as the super high healing output Juno. Just Juno kind of like. Ironically, Kiri is a power creeping type character, but Juno has power crept a lot of supports, not all of them. And Ana being super strong in the beginning kind of phases her out a little bit, not really. Now that nade cooldown is up. And Suzu is a neutral trade, which is something that I'm going to make a video on later. You just have to keep in touch for that. But I do think that teleport is the only thing that makes her not A tier. Because, spoiler alert, Brig is not in the B tier. She's in the A tier, first character in A tier. What sets these two apart for me is these are two support characters that like to take aggressive +1 angles with their DPS, like to go on flanks, like to, not flanks, but like, Brig is flanking in a more defensive way to go pack a DPS that's like going to take the long flank. Kiri is directly going with them, but then you also are able to TP out for aggressive positioning with the new major perk. I find that frankly ridiculous, and because her flexibility in positioning, it's not flexibility, it's worldwide. You are server admin in terms of positioning on Kiri nowadays, to the point where you do not get punished for being almost in a Moira sense, not as bad, but in a Moira sense, you don't get punished whatsoever on this character. You have a frail, tiny ass hitbox. You're really good at 1v1ing, and you have an ult that also makes you a little bit shiftier, and in the 1v1 can be good. Lasts really long, super forgiving to use. Super forgiving kunai, even though it's like the hitbox is really big with the season 9 changes. And you can TP, you server admin, you go wherever you want. You want to TP there? Oh, okay. Oh, we fucked up? Okay, TP out. We can TP twice in a 4-second window. Oh, it's 4 seconds, that's why it's balanced, Lars. No, it's fucking not. The only reason why this character isn't SS Giga S plus tier is because Juno hasn't been nerfed 20 times yet. She's been nerfed maybe 4 or 5 times. And the rest of the characters haven't caught up to the power creep that we've seen in support over the last couple of months since perks, since Juno, right? And that's why you're seeing a little bit of a resurgence in Kiri these days. So I think just off a principle of how hard the way that you want to play her is, but how easy her kit is. Like, yeah, Suzu timing is a little bit difficult. I'll give it up. It's difficult. You have to time Suzu well. She is a high skill-ish support. She is just way, way, way too easy to live when you fuck up with. Way too easy. Way too forgiving. Can fight her way out. But she can also leave if she wants to now with perks. And even then, like, TP is not a high cooldown. It's not. It's like, what, 8 seconds, 9 seconds? It's not a hard cooldown to manage. So, I don't think this character is the hardest in the world, but I don't think she's the easiest in the world. Again, like other characters, we're going to meet in the middle. She's almost A tier, but I can't justify it. I can't justify it because it's just so easy not to get punished for being bad at positioning with this character sometimes, right? And any character that has that kind of get out of jail debt forgiveness is just not hard, in my opinion. Is not that hard. And if they do, there are many other parts about their kit that are not easy bake oven. Like Tracer, she has a get out of jail free card, but it's Tracer. It's a lot different. You also pop like a balloon. You're 175, and you don't get value for just existing. Kiri, a lot of the characters below the A tier actually innately get value by existing with their game plan. Right, where like Kiri, if she's just healing and shooting, then she's getting a lot of value. Whereas like characters like Tracer, if you just walk into a point and shoot, you're not doing that much. You have to deliberately create a situation that is favorable for you, and then you can shoot, and then you can get high value. Versus Kiri, straight out of the gate, 5 seconds into the match, positioning doesn't matter all too much. Yeah, ideally you want to go on flanks angles with your DPS. Ideally sometimes you want to stack up your support. Ideally sometimes you want to go in a brawl core with a 5-man stack, go with your team, depending on the situation. Ideally, yes. But if you just play easy bake oven, average support player Kiri, you get more value than a lot of other supports in the game. So for that reason, I'm going to keep her in the B tier. Base level competency, again. You don't have to be super good with her to get innately high value on her. She's not gate capped in that sense. So next we have Brig. Brig is a lot of the same things that I said about Kiri, except you have a little bit better cross-map healing in your packs, but you sacrifice that by still being mobile, but not being nearly as mobile. There is a way, there's not really a way to feed with Kiri unless you're really like inting or like egregiously worse than every other player in the lobby. There is most certainly a way to feed on Break. And just off of that alone, and also that her ult has a lot more nuance, and that because it can stun, and because it gives you a lot of like armor, and it drastically affects your decision making in a given fight when you have it, and the way the enemy team responds to it, which is a mind game in of itself, and ult economy versus yada yada yada. The ult is a little bit more expressive, and you also have to hit your abilities to peel yourself off. Versus with Kiri, you can kind of just get the fuck right out of there. With Brig, you have to fight your way out, and there's no plan B. There's no leaving. Like, yeah, you can bash out and maybe like rotate with like a Lucio, but a Lucio Brig is not good. Rotate with like a Brig Juno away, but then you have to use every cooldown in the game, and then they're just gonna soft dive and they're gonna go engage on you again, right? Versus with Kiri, you TP out, and 8 seconds is not punishable, guys. I'm sorry, it's not nearly as punishable. Even though Brig has good cooldown on bash, it's not map wide. Okay, Kiri is not map wide, but like it feels map wide. Versus with Brig, it's just a short little 6-meter dash. Like she gets punished for worse positioning way more often than Kiri does, but kind of looks for similar angular plays, often from a more defensive position. However, but can also cross map pack. I will give it to her. Her healing is easier. But overall, I think she's just a little bit harder. So I'm going to put her in the A tier. I really like Overwatch 2 Brig. Let's see. Diva, I'm going to have next to her in A tier. I think she gets countered by so many characters in the game. Beams. Close range characters that kind of just like make her explode. Long-range poke characters that you can't get to on poke maps. Traditional dive characters, so you need to know the whole soft dive, hard dive, like a little bit more game sense than positioning than other characters have to. But she is very flexible. You can play her in a majority of situations in the game. I will say that. She is very tanky in matchups where she is tanky. So if you're not playing against these beam characters that just breathe on you, then you can get a lot of value with her. Matrix is very forgiving, but also high skill at the same time. What do I mean by that? Well, you have a lot of casts of Matrix in Overwatch 2 as opposed to Overwatch 1. But the way you use your Matrix as a bad versus a good Diva player can drastically change the outcome of a game or outcome of any given fight. Very good skill ceiling ability. She also does not have a fantastic ultimate. It kind of just resets your cycle in the form of bomb. And so you have to be good at Divas and neutral to get value on the hero. And for that, I think she can go into the A tier. Also, she's a tank busting character. She has, from back in the GOATS era, you have a very unique way of playing into every individual tank as diva, where the other characters are kind of doing the same thing. Like Winston is usually ignoring the tank because he doesn't have good tank shred. But diva strikes a nice middle ground between being able to dive DPS and being able to and mark DPS and peel and play defensively and play aggressively, but also tank trade to the point where there's a little bit of a nuance in which one do I pick, right? Depending on the situation. And the fact you have to think a little bit more on this character, from a positioning standpoint, because boosters does not send you as far as Monkey. It's a weaker form of mobility, but it is up often. So like you position very differently as opposed to other characters, even within your own role, your own class. And that coupled with when do I peel versus when do I like go in aggressively, and you have so much flexibility that it ends up becoming overbearing in a sense. And also you can really tell when a diva is positioning really badly. I'll give her an A. I'll give her an A. Let's see. A tier, A tier, A tier. Oh, I forgot Mauga. I'm stupid. Okay, Mauga's gonna go in B. Mauga's gonna go in B. And I think Reinhardt's also gonna go in B. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. So for Mauga, he's gotten a little bit harder since Cardiac has been repeatedly nerfed. So now you have to use Cardiac in more of a supportive, supplementary way for your team after you engage with your pin, or in a fight that's congested and there's like a Genji or a Tracer or an Echo or like a Cass or like these close range characters, these Shotgun Reaper that are fighting with you in the Bastion, fighting with you in the cage, fighting another tank off, and you don't just exclusively use it for tank shred anymore. You can't play Mauga just AFK playing for tank burn as you used to be able to when the character came out after getting buffed initially in that patch, if you remember. Long time ago, for people watching who remember that. The whole pay to win Mauga Battle Pass scam, whatever that was. But now Mauga has more of a proactive playstyle instead of just AFK shooting a tank. Other than that, he's pretty straightforward. You can fuck up with Mauga. You can pin wrong. You can absolutely cage wrong. You can absolutely mismanage Cardiac. You can absolutely not know the nuance between when do I use minigun versus when do I use flamethrower versus or flame gun versus when do I use both, right? So a little bit of nuance in Mauga. I like that. I like that he has a hit scan weapon, even though, yes, there is a braindead way to use it, close range. Longer ranges, you do have to aim a little bit. It's not super hard, but you know, Mauga is not a character that someone can just pick up and play anymore. You do have to learn a little bit of him and his positioning and how to like make the character work, and also in conjunction with other characters. Realize that just because he is a brawl tank with poke, his poking is not excellent, so you're more so looking for hits alongside your DPS, which is a very dive hazard monkey type of mindset with Mauga most of the time. And for that, I think good Mauga players, or even like satisfactory / at base skill threshold competency, Mauga is harder than any of the characters below him, barring probably all of the characters below him. And for Reinhardt, I think he's really simple, really simple, but you're either swinging or you're shielding, and that lack of flexibility in playstyle and expression makes it so that you have to be a good game sense player when playing with a Lucio. And even if you are playing with a Lucio, that can easily, a Juno, that can easily speed you around, easily like reposition you to get you to a point where like, do I want to go out? We can go out. Do I want to go in? We can hammer in. You still have to know when to do that and be a very effective shot caller. Versus a lot of other tanks in the game, their value is not so reliant on being a good leader and being good at communication. Reinhardt is difficult, not only from a positional standpoint, but like at competency, because a lot of players just pin in and charge in and be like that ranked Andy that you hate to have on your team. The competent Reinhardt requires, instead of difficulty in mechanics, rather difficulty in communication and in-game leadership. And to me, that puts him a peg above all the other characters, where In DPS, you do not have to be in VC for. Almost no DPS character that are a hit scan at least, you have to be in VC for to get innate like more like competency baseline like value with. Whereas with Reinhardt, if your team isn't on the same page as you, you are going to feed. Or you're going to be playing so passively that your team wonders why you're playing on Reinhardt and wonders why you're not holding a sig angle. Right? So there's levels to Rein, but I do think from a kit perspective, he's pretty straightforward. So I can't justify putting him any higher, but I can justify him putting him in the middle. Reinhardt players, do that as you may. You are in the same tier as Mercy. Let that sink in. Next character. Not as bad, but next character. I'm going to put Juno in low A next to Brig. Juno is really strong, but Juno also is one of the most diveable characters in the game. Despite being super duper strong, you do have to play her very disciplined. For lack of a better word, disciplined. You do have movement cooldowns in the form of boots and in the form of E. But they're not so oppressive like TP, Suzu, these like mitigation type abilities, or like very quick displacement cooldowns of mobility, these flashes of mobility, where you actually have time as the opposing DPS or tank player to kill her for attempting to leave. And for that reason, Juno players have to be more precautionary with the way they position as opposed to other supports who can fight their way out or can just nope their way out of the situation like Kiriko can, or like even like a Lucio can. And for that reason, I think she is a little bit harder than them baseline competency for positioning in general for supports. She is not fantastic at damage until she gets the headshot perk, which she becomes Thanos when she gets the headshot perk, for FYI. Using her ult properly is something that a lot of players somehow mess up, even though it's a big-ass AoE. I just think it's because of the timing of it. Like, when do I use Juno ult? Like, do we have Blade win condition? Do we have, like, Visor win condition? Do we have win condition, period? Do we have tank in a very favorable position? Do we need to actually Juno backwards plus ring, and then, like, leave with the ring to kite out, to bait enemy ult, to, like just play to bait, and then Like there's some nuance in the way that you position with the ult, right? Kind of like Kiri in a sense. But I think because your ult dictates the fight a little bit more than a Kiri ult would, it's less forgiving if you fuck up. You have to be good with it to consistently get value on the character outside of like even baseline level of competency. Juno, I'd rather play Bap because I have Immo and I have like a more aggressive form of self-utility. Actually, Juno doesn't have self-utility at all. It's just movement, like win by being better than your opponent. Versus Bap, you can just like heal yourself, and even if you're in a bad position, if you're good mechanically, you can just fight your way out, right? Juno, you don't have that, and for that reason, I'm gonna put her a little bit higher. But she is a similar style of support, brawl support, who enables their tank with a hit scan weapon, both from healing and from damaging the enemy tank and team by extension, but also has the ability to speed team in. Speed, I forgot speed. All of the nuance with speed, the ways to use speed. I really like Juno. She's not a super difficult character, but she's just nuanced enough that makes it so that you have to think about her in a lot of different situations, and you have to play her differently into a lot of different comps, and you have to play her differently as opposed to a lot of different support characters in the game already, as is. So I think she was a really good addition to the game. I think she just came out a little bit overtuned. I'm glad that she's gotten the love and the attention that the Overwatch community has given her, and that she very well deserves. In a new poster girl for Overwatch, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Let's move on. She's hard. There you go, Juno mains. Enjoy that. She's popular. She's hard. Moving on. Not super hard, but you get it. The further up we get to the list, the worse it's going to get, right? So next we have what I like to call the Game Sense sisters, or the Game Sense duo. The team play duo of Mei and Sim. So Mei, a little bit easier than her counterpart in Sim, in my opinion. The way that you can use wall is very, very strategic at skill ceiling, but considering we're talking about skill competency, you're mostly using wall to isolate a tank, in which case you have to know certain wall spots, the timing of the wall, if your opponent just like jumps over it in anticipation that you're going to wall. Do you have a Lucio to speed you in, or a Juno to speed you in, to make the wall a little bit more easier to time, right? You're looking for a lot of those wall kill boxes with your tank on brawl maps, But what happens when we don't get a brawl map, because not all maps are brawl maps, right? Well, now we have to play a more stationary boots on the ground hit scan style of Mei, using her icicle against like Pharah or Echo, or other hit scans. Or like we only get to wall a couple of times during a game. Maybe on a high ground map, we use wall to boost ourselves up to the high ground and challenge the high ground because my tank is not going because it's a fucking idiot in diamond, right? So the game plan with Mei isn't as simple. It's often boiled down to just wall a tank and be done with it. And yes, that can get you value in a ranked environment, but you're not going to be able to do that realistically on every single map as Mei. You kind of can, but you need to have a team of people. Like the squad, the brawl squad has to pull up to assist you on those walls. And you can't, any character that has to rely on their team in any capacity for key plays is going to be a little bit harder, because how do we circumvent that in a ranked environment? Like if you want to look at this holistically within a team play environment, I don't know if she gets a little bit harder or a little bit easier. I haven't been in that situation. So like having a team that's ready to follow up on you is easier, but in other ways, your team lives and dies by that play, you know? So getting good Mei walls is super crucial. And that's just Mei wall. There's also like throwing Blizzard down. Snowball, he's very difficult to eat, so most of the time you're going to get the ult down, especially if you throw a wall in front of it. But on some maps where it's not a box point or it's not a cough, on cough she becomes super brain dead. But on maps where it's not cough, it's very easy to mess up the field, or like not mess it up, but just get a cooldown or two out of it, which is like, it's okay. But to get good snowball, you have to be very, very, very smart at timing it and tracking enemy cooldowns, which other characters don't say the same. Like every character has to track CDs to a certain extent, for the most part, a couple exceptions, but Mei has to act on those cooldowns a little bit more than others. She is very forgiving because she's high HP projectile weapon that is one of the better, if not the best, projectile type weapon that can go toe to toe with some hit scans even at some ranges. Not better, but it can do some damage, especially if you jiggle peek on some maps. Medium range maps, she can be very good with the ice cold poking. Even in a map like Havana, she becomes decently good on. She's good on narrow chokes, of course. Again, super forgiving, 300 HP, ice block, but there are some nuances with her that I think put her a little bit above some of the rest. And then next to her we have Sim. She's more of the same. She's decently not as tanky as Mei, but pretty solidly tanky. There's a lot of flexibility in your playstyle. You can go for the turret kill box playstyle, or you can go for the TP playstyle with the added 50% range on that. And playing Sim, again, the reason why I call these the team play duo is because Sim TP is a lot more beneficial for anyone but herself. And remember what I said about individual agency and autonomy versus am I relying on other players, right? And for Sim, TP is a game-changing ability, but it's not super good on Sim, ironically enough. Like, yeah, you can TP bomb, but like, I'm way more afraid of like a Doomfist holding his punch and then coming out of the TP on like a Li Jiang and just killing 3 off the bridge. If we like, we're just not allowed to go bridge on left unless we have a Lucio or a Juno to speed us out really quickly. Otherwise, we have to take opposite side. And when you force positioning like that, or even like kill box, like boom, 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 turret, if you force positioning like that, you can be really smart with a character, and it's not super branded. Like, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for every map. Outside of Li Jiang, I think players have kind of figured out that Sim is pretty Thanos on Li Jiang, regardless of how good she is in the current metagame. But I just think that you are playing for your team. You're a very supporty DPS character. Yes, you have Beam. Yes, at a baseline level of competency, you're not doing super like deep team plays with your team. But even still, you have to use like kind of I wouldn't say it's a mediocre kit. It's a well-rounded kit, but like from DPS perspective, you're not doing like, you're not killing 5, you know? Like you're taking a 1v1, you're harassing them with your beam until it's high charge, and then you become a scary 1v1 against characters who are highly mobile but lack sustainability, like Genji, Tracers, like Echoes, like Flyers not really, like Sombra. Even like Maze or like another Sim, something like maybe Sojourn even, Hanzo. venture, to an extent venture. I don't know. Sim is a little bit hard. But a lot of these, you get what I mean. A lot of these characters that in the 1v1, they're afraid of you. You can get away with 1v1 them. Otherwise, you're playing to, or I guess in general, you're playing to isolate 1v1 through your turret. Maybe like poke with your turret, like throw your turret on one end, other turret, or not turret, fucking TP, my bad. TP one side, poke, TP to the next side, and then be proactive in two places at once and flip-flop between those two places of sim. You see a lot of good sims do this. They'll TP in one proactive part of the map, and they'll TP to the other side of the map, preferably where their team is. So they have a safe TP out, but they're also off-angling with TP simultaneously. Like, they'll right-click on an angle towards the enemy team on a flank, and then TP right back to their team and build up beam charge and throw turrets and be annoying. But the fact that you even have to think about this kind of stuff as sim to achieve a good, competent sim, to me, makes her decently difficult. And also you have to, from a team play, game sense perspective, know all this stuff. Plus, I haven't even talked about ult, which, yes, like it can be kind of easy on Koth. You just section off a part of the point with Q, and that's kind of it. But, like, there are certain things that you can do with sim in general, like, that can really elevate her, that a base level sim is not going to know. But a base level sim is still doing more than just running up and beaming an enemy tank. Like, I think that's like a low end sim. Like a sim is just without a tank or like a team that is going to genuinely like do everything in their power to supplement that play style and play around you and then make you play greedy sim. You have to play sim very defensively on the back foot, which requires a more reactionary / like I'm doing what the enemy team wants. Like I'm playing for what the enemy team wants, or I'm playing for what my team wants, which is just not how majority of Overwatch characters play the game. Sim is very weird, very good, somewhat forgiving, somewhat easy from a mechanical standpoint. It's just poking with right click and just like throwing turrets and then beam. But I think the way that you play her is what makes her difficult. Again, difficulty comes in multiple forms. The community hyper focuses on mechanics making a character hard. There's so much more that goes into it. Is a character weird to play? / are they unique? Does a character, obviously, yes, have a hard mechanical, outplay potential, blah, blah, blah. Is a character unforgiving? Do they have to get out of jail free cards? Do they have things that maybe they're difficult in one sense, but in another, they're super brain dead? You don't have to worry about positioning, right? Or being like super locked in on that. Are they good or bad in the current context of the game? Which is a very minor factor and is last on the list of all 5. Because, again, not good faith to just say, oh, this character is difficult because they suck. That's not fair. But it does play a part. So I will undermine it, but I won't downplay it to the point where it doesn't exist. Because Junkrat, if we want to be pedantic, we could put him up a little bit, because these types of characters, these types of characters are not it. But Sim, I think these characters are misunderstood. Next character, I've been talking about that for too long. Let's see. What do I got here? Sojourn? No, I think we're going to wait for Sojourn for a little bit later. But I think she's still gonna be in the A tier in my opinion. Let's go Queen. Queen I'm gonna put probably like next to Diva. Decent survivability, very squishy on poke maps, where you are very isolated from a hitbox perspective. Like you have a decently frail hitbox for a tank, but you have no mitigation, no shield, no nothing. You're kind of just living based on getting close to your opponent and living off your lifesteal and healing from your brawl core. So if you don't have that on a circuit, you're kind of just poking and AFKing on an L-shaped pattern, then, for those of you who don't know, L-shaped pattern is just the corner, where you're playing corners and just like jiggle peeking and shooting. On key chokes on maps most of the time. The King's Row have a lot of L-shapes, For example, the hotel is an L-shape. And the right side is also an L shape on King's Row on first point. But, what's it called? Because you don't have that flexibility in positioning, you play live or die by the brawl style. It makes it a little bit harder, so you have to really get good at that one play style. You're mostly playing her with Lucio and Juno. You're mostly playing her on New Jump City. You're mostly playing her on maps like those, I guess. Cough. Sometimes you can, like, if you have a sim, you can get the queens in decent positions, but that's a team play. That's like a higher level. Average baseline of competency to play queen. You have to have good cooldown management because your shift is on a long-ish cooldown. So you have to know, when do I swing wide? When do I like go in with my team? What's a good situation? Have the cooldowns been expended? Is a player out of position? Does my team see an opportunity and they're ready to take it? Like Genji's calling for it, like, Queen, let's go, 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 go. Can you shout in 3? Can you shout in 3? What sets her apart from another brawl tank like Orisa or Mauga is that there are more ways to fuck up and there are more abilities that you have to hit in the form of dagger, in the form of E, in the form of Q, which is easily countered by Suzu, by the way, and abilities like those. So a little bit more to think about with Queen. Punish a little bit harder for positioning than the other two brawl tanks, like pure brawl tanks, and doesn't have excellent poking like Mauga and Orisa do. Excellent is a stretch, but you get it. And it's just a little bit harder mechanically. That's kind of it. Pretty simple as to why she's a bit harder than them. But it's more or less like kind of the same shtick. So we have like 3 levels of brawl tanks: easy, middle ground, decently hard. Not super hard, decently hard. And she gets countered by a lot of characters. And she's not... There isn't a braindead way to play her. You have to play her smart. Let's see. Let's go Sombra. Sombra is really weird, unique playstyle. Flanker playstyle, yes, but you do it from Invis, and Invis is not infinite cooldown, and it's not get out of jail free translocator anymore. It's way harder to get out of fights, and it's way more punishable if you do. It's still relatively low risk plays to go for flank plays on Sombra most of the time. But then you have to think about, am I playing around a health pack? Then you have to think about, like, where do I throw my translocator to? Then you have to think about, how do I stage pre-fight so the team can't see me with this new Sombra, but also be in a position to where I can get realistic value within 6 seconds with my Invis. And yes, you can blow people up, and yes, it's really easy to just throw virus and then track for a little bit and hack and yada yada yada. And yes, EMP is one of the most effective ultimates in the game, but you do have to use it a little bit smartly. And I always thought that this character had a decently high skill ceiling for how hated she was. And now with this new Sombra, I don't know if she's easier or harder than the new Sombra. I think it might just be because she's so weak and also unplayable now because of bans that people kind of associate her with being harder now. But I don't think she's super difficult. I think it's kind of just like tracking and game sense. And she's still a lot more forgiving than a lot of other characters on this list. So I'm not going to put her super duper high. But I do feel like she's gotten potentially a little bit more up after the nerfs and after bans. And just like, even, it's not good faith, but like, fuck it, I don't care. Even getting the character has become a challenge. So same thing with Mercy. Even getting the character has become a challenge. Moira as well. Getting the character has become a ball. Getting the character has become a challenge to the point where now the new metagame is how do we find a way to convince my team to not ban the character, and also for the enemy team to not just blind pick ban my character, you know? So like, if Sombra remains, I feel bad for y'all, but also at the same time, I genuinely despise your character. Okay, I despise how your character was. Now they're kind of fine, but old translocator, that shit needed to go. I'm glad they reworked her. And the rework was a success in my opinion. I just think the devs listen too much to the player base saying, we hate Sombra, we hate Sombra, we hate denial, we hate denial. And yes, I find Sombra annoying, and yes, I complain about Sombra from time to time. Yes, I find her a little bit frustrating, but you have to think from the Sombra player's point of view too. Like, this is a two-way street. Like, this is not an easy character by any stretch. So I get it with the Overwatch player base. Like I get it to an extent, but leave her alone. Like she's been dead. She's not only been dead. Like we're throwing salt in the wound. We're pouring gasoline and lead in the graves that's been there for years. Like it's dead on arrival type shit. Like ever since the second rework. Like it's just I don't see it. But anyways, enough about ranting about Sombra. Lifeweaver. Yes. Lifeweaver. And why do I say this? It's kind of the Mercy situation, and I hate Lifeweaver. It's kind of like the Mercy situation. You get baseline level of competency on this hero. Yes, that's right. Baseline level of competency, in my opinion. you have to play so drastically differently from everyone else. And maybe because my standards are high, but my definition of a baseline competency of Lifeweaver is way, way, way higher than your average support player's baseline expected. They're what they think is a baseline competency of Lifeweaver. You need to be a god to justify playing that character. This is one of those characters where he gets a pass for being so high because of how fucking shit he is. This is the exception to that rule. You have to be tapped in with Lifeweaver's basic game plan to get any fathomable crux of value on the hero. I'm totally biased. I don't care. Guys, I don't care. Hi, I don't care that I'm biased. I don't. I am clowning on this character, but also I'll give it up. He's not super easy to play. Because there's so much that can fuck up. There's so much that can go wrong. Pedal placement wrong. Positioning wrong. He's not crazy forgiving because once the pedal is gone, he's super easy to isolate and kill. Tree is a uniquely weird ability to use. Do we use it to cut off chokes because of the physical hitbox? Versus do we use it for CD bait? Do we use it to extend a team fight? Like, do I want my team to live and exist on a point for long and then we just like kind of like kill shit? And we use like a traditional support ult? Like pull, the whole like pull is a hero in of itself. But Lifeweaver is there's so much depth to his kit, but it's so one note and it's so fucking garbage. Like I hate Lifeweaver. But I will give it to you. It's not for the faint of heart. Well, first good thing I've said about Lifeweaver probably on this channel. I think that's it. Maybe we have a couple more characters to add in A tier. I think Hanzo is hard. His projectile is very easy to mess up, hard to land now these days. Sonic, his perks are not fantastic. I know Sonic got buffed recently, and that's really good quality of life for him. He can kind of just AFK on an angle by a health pack and hold it down really well on some maps in kind of like kill box and tight spaces. Like Lijiang, that left side Mega on Lijiang, Garden, the one that the Pharahs like to play on, is actually decently oppressive. Because you can cover main point, but also AFK on a health pack, and it's hacked forever. And you could theoretically hack every single Mega on a map, on a 3-lane map, on like a Koth map, if you Sonic it. Like, obviously it's unrealistic, but like, my point being, because of the 30-second lockout timer, you can Sonic multiple parts of the map at once and section off Megas. The entire map is denied, like you're playing Sombra. But at the same time, you're playing a character that is doing it from a very safe position and from angles that you can just shoot people from and they just die. So you can kill box with Hanzo in a very unique way after perks have come out. But the problem is that the rest of his perks are just kind of underwhelming. Like Yamagami technique is pretty good, but I don't know. It's just maybe these Hanzo buffs, maybe they'll change my mind. But I just find he's been obsolete and powercraft by Sojourn and Freja to the point where like maybe that's part of what makes him difficult. But also he's just Hanzo. Like his arrow is just difficult to land. And yeah, Sonic is better, and yeah, Dragon Strike is pretty simple to use to cut off a choke. Like there's some unique ways to play through it, but it's kind of just point and click. And sure, his what's the scatter? The Stormbow. Sure, Stormbow is very intuitive, very easy, simple to use. There's still like the bounce tech. There's still, you have to hit your shots, and also your shots are harder to land than every other character in the game in your category. So off of that principle alone, I think I'll give Hanzo the bump. It's not just that this character is hard because he's bad scenario. It goes beyond that. That's kind of Lifeweaver. This goes beyond that. This is like devs actively neglecting Hanzo type disrespect, but also he was already kind of hard to begin with. And you have a mobility cooldown, but it's hard to not isolate yourself because it's not a fantastic cooldown. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's just a little tiny lunge that can impact, that's good, but it's only serviceable type good. It's not like game changer. So for that, I'll put Hanzo in A. Freja, I haven't had my hands on her too much outside of alt accounts, but I will say she does feel hard to play. She's at the time of recording this video, she's extremely broken. Extremely broken. But And I thought she was going to be lukewarm on release too. My bad. I thought Freja was going to be super healthy. She is good for the game, but she doesn't need to be toned down a little bit. But outside of that, hitting shots while in flight, there is a little bit of like camera stop while you shoot it, so it becomes a little bit easier to hit the projectile. I thought that you would have to like land the shot while coming down to an extent, but because you're suspended in mid-air, landing shots in mid-air is actually not nearly as hard as like the hero fantasy, like the trailers were saying, like Freya is going to be this new expressive like hybrid between Echo and hit scan, and really no, but she still has a hybrid projectile / hit scan ish weapon that requires skill to use, and her positioning is a little bit more nuanced than a character like Cass or Soldier in the hit scan category, or even like Ashe to an extent. And her ult is really weird. It's like you do need to have skill to play Freya. I don't think it's as much as, maybe the community agrees with me on this one. It's not as much as we initially thought though. So maybe I'm gonna put her in like the middle here. She's not super giga, super like duper, but I think she does struggle in the 1v1 if she doesn't have the bolt, and you have to fight with just neutral cooldowns. She is easily isolated, so she isn't, in a 2v1 scenario, she's not good at fighting back, but in a 1v1, it's very easy for her to displace like a flanker and then like go away and then like kind of like shoot them and like land a shot and then it kills. But like if any more than one person dives her, sometimes it does feel difficult as Freya. I guess that's what ult is for, but then you're relying on like an ultimate for that. So I don't know. Not super duper hard, not super easy either. I think Freya was a bit overhyped from a difficulty standpoint. But she's definitely like, you have to land your shots, so there's that. Not as hard as Hanzo in my opinion. A little bit more in depth to her, a little more nuance than Hanzo. But Hanzo, I think, just off of principle of your shots are harder to land, and Freya was already mostly about shots being harder to land, I'm going to put her a little bit lower than Hanzo. Maybe, like, not lower than Sim and Mei. That's my bad. I think Sim and Mei are a little bit too high here. But, like, probably towards the bottom. But, yeah. I think we're getting close to the S tier. Let me throw Pharah in the middle. She does have, since the rework, more flexibility in positioning horizontally and vertically with multiple cooldowns instead of just being able to like kind of fly up and that's it. Because of that, you're not poking as much, so there isn't a brain dead way to play Pharah like there used to be with a pocket. Pharmacy is not nearly as impressive anymore. So you have to play a more self-sufficient Pharah, and for that reason, I think it goes up a little bit since prior Pharah. More flexibility in the way that you can use her ult. I just think that, like, flexibility in the way that you play greatly dictates how good or bad a character is on this tier list for difficulty. In some ways good that are like enabling to the hero, in other ways bad in ways where it's like, now I have to play a certain way because of how limited I am, which makes them like easier or harder. It depends, but you get it. For Pharah, I just think that you gotta hit your shots. She's a little bit easier than, say, like Echo, the flyer counterpart. She requires subtly different positioning than other characters in the game because of the flight mechanic. And so she does play a little bit of a unique game. She really struggles into some matchups. Like, hit scans are bad. They're not as... They're more doable than like an Echo, but they're still like hit scan Pharah. Like, you're not winning hit scan Pharah in the neutral unless you dive above their head and like shoot them in angles that were difficult for you to be shot at. In which case, are we really calling that neutral anymore, right? So I think for Pharah, it's a weird middle ground between she's like, the gameplay loop is not super duper hard, but you still have to land your shots, and her positioning is quite nuanced, and so for that, I'll give her the bump. And I think, yeah, we're kind of rounding out A here. Widowmaker, I don't really have to explain this one that much. She's hard off a virtue of being mechanically hard, and that's it. Because we already know, and also she's getting banned a lot, but that doesn't count. Again, she only has like a couple of maps. She's really oppressive on those couple of maps, but holistically playing Widowmaker, again, I can't say this about, I can't do double standard. I can't say this about one character. He can only play this way on a couple of maps, like a Mei. And I can't say the same and go back and say, like, oh, Widowmaker, you know, on every map she's oppressive. No. On high ground maps and on stationary hit scan maps, long range sightline maps, Junkertowns, Havanas, Dorados, you get it. she is extremely impressive. But outside of that, she's just kind of normal and unassuming. And so there are some situations where she is Thanos, but even in those situations, you are getting the character banned a lot. And even though it doesn't count, I do have to kind of consider that a little bit, because a character that's so one note and one dimensional as Widow is, needs to have that one dimension be good. And it is good, but right now it's unplayable, because unless you have another Widow player on the team and the enemy team, like, gentleman's agreement to Widow duel, the character is just going to get banned every game on those maps anyway, because players at a high enough skill level know that the character is good and oppressive and annoying to fight on that map. So this is another example where ban system makes her harder, because now you have to play Widow on maps that are unfavorable for her. And that you have to lean even more into being a good Widow player. So it's harder to be a bad Widow player these days. And again, base level of competency on Widow has increased since bans, because now you can't just play her in a situation where she is brain dead to play. I can miss 70 shots on Widow, I'm still getting value on Junkertown. I could miss a bunch of shots for the first minute, get one pick, the enemy team has to back up to some extent. My team is fighting a 4v5 on Junkertown, which is heavily favorable. All I have to do is hit like one body shot past that point, and then it's cash money for us. And then we win point one, just because I got one pick. And this happens all the time. And now it's mitigated because of bans. So I just think, because of bans, this is a rare exception, Widow goes up. And I think she probably wouldn't even be B tier. She would just be like a lower A had it not been for bans. But now she goes almost into S tier levels of difficulty, because it's so hard to force her now. It's so hard. You have to be so good at Widow to force her now. Which is good. Bans found a way to make Widow bounce. Thank fucking God. Thank God, because she was a scourge on the game. I'll give it up. I really disliked fighting her. I understand that she's very hard to play, but I disliked fighting her. So, you know what? Props to the devs. Maybe we'll do a video on bans. Let me know in the comments if you guys want a video on bans. I'll do like a holistic, like a overview, little rundown over how bans went. I think bans were pretty successful. Let me guys know what you think. Let's see. Doomfist, generic dive tank. However, there are some nuances of his kit that other characters don't have. He does not have the innate survivability of Diva or Monkey, but he trades that off with a lot more overall mobility and a lot more tank shred. So he's like turned up to 11. He's the hyper extreme, like hits you like a truck but can't break type dive tank. And that allows him to take way more aggressive swings sometimes. That allows him to greed for plays more often, but you also get punished harder if you fail. So Doomfist is very contingent on landing all of your abilities, landing your slams, getting your like punch techs, getting your stair slams good, getting your like all of your tech. And you can play Doomfist at a base level of competency without the tech, but at that point it's kind of punch body and you're not getting like all that much value. And so for that, I feel like you do have to learn a little bit of tech to not excel with Doomfist, but get to that baseline. Like when I say baseline, I've been saying it a lot, but like even like a plat/diamond level, like, or even like at least at your rank, if we're gonna look at it across all ranks, at your rank to go even or like slightly positive in a game and have a positive impact and carry your weight, with Doomfist it is significantly harder than characters below him. Very, very, very susceptible to counters. The absorb ability on block does fare really well, bode nicely against characters like Cass, where Nade kind of just isolated you for 2 seconds and you were a sitting duck. And Sombra is in the pits and she's in the depths of despair and she's in the Phantom Zone, she's in the Twilight Zone, and she's in the Doom Dimension, and she's in the what's it called? What is it in Yu-Gi-Oh? The Shadow Realm. She's in the Shadow Realm now. She's been banished. Gone. Be gone. And now Doomfist has become, by proxy, a little bit easier to play because his counters are more manageable now. But outside of that, he's still Doomfist, so I'll put him in like a little bit higher than this. Probably, yeah, around Widow level. Not at quite S tier, because there is like a gameplay loop with Doomfist that is very replicable, but there are things about him that are difficult. His tech being like, there is an infinite level of expression with Doomfist. So Yeah, I do think he gets overrated in terms of difficulty, but at the same time, he is still a difficult character. Next, we're just gonna do all of like the difficult but not S tier difficult tanks. Sigma, Hazard, and Monkey. And I think for these 4 tanks, they're around a similar level, so organizing them doesn't really matter. I'm not gonna order them. I think they're all around the same level. But for your Doomfist mains, because I love you guys, we'll do that. And then if you want to like be ego about it, then we can do that. And then we'll move these 2 down because I think there's still like hard but just raw aim characters. So Doomfist mains, love you guys. Let me know in the comments if you're a Doomfist player or play any of these characters for that matter and what you think about my video. But let's keep going. For Hazard, he has a ton of flexibility in his playstyle. He is a dive tank, but also with mild brawl capabilities in the form of he is really fast. He has really, really good mobility. And he can isolate and wall off DPS and supports, which allows for more brawly, like on-the-point style plays that other dive tanks physically cannot do without risking death. Couple that with him also having block makes it so that you can take more aggressive swings than other characters, but you have to do it in enough of a thought-provoking way that makes him secretly not easy to play. Like, you have to worry about wall, you have to worry about when I block, you have to worry about sleep dart and all this stuff that makes it like I can just blow up and I'm not super duper tanky. I have a middle ground. I have a similar shotgun spread tile weapon to Doomfist, but I also don't do nearly as much damage as Doomfist in a tank shred scenario. So I can't just shotgun the enemy tank to win, so I have to play for more like diving or brawl the enemy DPS core and support backline. So there is that, and there is also wall climb, and there is also one shot tech, and there is also how to use my ult properly, very easy ult to fuck up, and there's also, I think that's it, but ways to like reset your wall climb and little bits of movement tech here, little spaces for optimization. But even at a baseline level of competency, you do have to know a lot about the game. You do have to be good at other dive tanks as a kind of like a prerequisite to be decent at Hazard, or at least like play dive characters. Like having like a Genji could elevate your Hazard a lot because you take quite similar positions, except now you have 500 HP and a wall, which I guess I can't put him in S tier because he is a little forgiving. He's not like super duper forgiving, but he does have some get out of jail free stuff. Wall climb, mobility cooldowns, 2 mobility cooldowns, and a block is very nice, and a wall as well is very, very, very nice on a decently low cooldown. And unlike Mei, you can shoot it from anywhere, from high ground to low ground, from long range, from directly in front of you, from directly above you. It sticks above you, and then you can wall climb it. Like, there's so much dynamicism, but also ease of use at the same time. Very unique design. I really like Hazard. I don't know, where does all the Hazard hate come from? It must have come from him being OP last season, or like 2 seasons ago, but I think Hazard is fine now. I think Hazard is fun now. I think Hazard is hard now. Very well designed here, character. Sigma is one-dimensional in the sense that he is the poke god, but he also has layers in that poking game plan that makes him hard. You have to position really well because he has 0 mobility outside of the levitation perk, which low-key isn't even that good. You have to land your skill shots in the form of your E to get realistic value on the character. You have to know shield dancing like dashing between the shield back and forth. You have to shield at the right time. You have to hit your ult, which surprisingly, despite having a big hitbox, Sigma players tend to fail a lot. They whiff that a lot, myself included. I'm not gonna lie. Granted, I don't play that much Sig, but he also is map dependent, so playing him on all maps is going to require, because of how slow he is and how like long range sightline based he is, kind of like a Widow situation on maps where he's not super favorable. You will have a harder time, and you have to be a smarter player. He is really, really good for rank though. He has great sustain, and he has great all this, all that. He's like good in almost every category, so he's like a consistent outside of mobility. He's just like 5 stars in every category. So he's unforgiving in the sense of mobility, but everything else, like he's a decently, like actually really tanky tank. Good outside of pro play. Pro play he becomes squishy, but like not super duper high levels of play. He's really tanky. Shield, shift, hyper spears do a ton of damage. Right click is or E into left click is a guaranteed kill most of the time. Like, majority of the time, they just die if they get hit by it. That level of personal agency allows him to be really strong, but also, like, there is mechanics behind that. So for Sig, I'm going to put him in the A tier. And positioning also, I'm going to put him in the A tier. And now I think that leaves us with the S tier characters in the game. So we already know Tracer's number 1, because that's been my opinion forever. If you've watched any of my videos, I think Tracer's number 1. But we'll go from the bottom to the top. We know that Tracer is the best, but besides from that, let's start with Aqua. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't exist. We don't know yet. We'll find out. We hope that he's good. We hope that he's hard to play, because we like high skill expression characters. We like high skill sim characters that are fun. Not Freja, that are fun. Let's start with... Let's go with Lucio. I'd say Lucio is probably the bottom of S. Lucio, a lot of dynamics in positioning. Healing versus... Dynamic between healing versus speed. Speeding your tank, speeding your DPS in, plus +1ing on off angles, using your defensive ult, or using it aggressively. All of this nuance in decision making. Plus, he's mechanically intensive, because there's all that wall riding tech. There's when do I boot people? How do I boot people? If I boot people and go for that Reddit playstyle. Playstyle. A million ways to play Lucio. Healbot Lucio, or like stationary floor Lucio, or Reddit Lucio, or just play to gain ult charge Lucio and play to speed your tank in Lucio, brawl Lucio, dive Lucio, on a Lucio. Like, there's 1,000 on a Lucio. Juno Lucio, which plays drastically different and is just super speed bot. Like, so many ways and situations that you have to play Lucio differently from composition to composition, where there's not that much nuance with other characters. He is very good at dueling, so to leverage that, you want to be mechanically good. And also, if you don't know what you're doing at Lucio, a baseline level of competency has to be you use your speed well and you speed in your brawl tank, which surprisingly players don't start doing until maybe Diamond or Masters. It's surprising to see how Lucio players play very selfishly or play the character incorrectly. It's very easy to play him incorrectly because there's a support mindset that you have to play to heal rather than to speed, but the speed is the support. The speed is the utility. And that's a learning curve in of itself. But also, I just think he's just unique enough, but to be like difficult and mechanically difficult, but also simple enough that he's like not pick up and play, but he's accessible and fun, and he strikes that nice little balance. He's also just cool as fuck. Like, he's charismatic as fuck. I really like Lucio. And yeah, a lot of flexibility in positioning. You can play high ground. You can play floor Lucio. You have to hit your shots, which is a factor. Hitting your shots is a big difference. Getting your beat faster is a big difference. Getting kills is a big difference. Being a Healbot Lucio versus being a good Lucio, but still know when to challenge people and play aggressively can make or break your value on the hero. And I just think there's just so much to him. There's so much to him with wall riding, and even like the general game plan is not super simple, but past that, there's so much expression. And yeah, this is baseline competency, but still, I feel like with Lucio, there's a lot of pathways for support. Like, he is the epitome of skill sitting and support. That's not Ana. And spoiler alert, Ana is right next to him. Ana, in my opinion, the hardest support in the game. You have 0 mobility, but you have really broken cooldowns. So you have to use those broken cooldowns as much as you can to kind of mechanics your way to victory, but at the same time, you can't do it like Bap, where he can just get out of jail free, but like fight to survive. You do fight to survive as Ana, but you do it with no mobility cooldown. So you are very susceptible to getting killed, and so you have to either hit your skill shot or be positioned at a really good spot to the point where you can't get dove in realistically, but also still be in a valuable position for your team, or all of the above in some cases, and that's what makes Ana difficult. Plus the timing on sleep darts, plus when we're using the sleep darts, plus the timing on nades, plus when we're using nades, plus when do I use my nano, plus who do I use my nano on, the defensive or offensive nano. So many things to think about. The only thing that could keep her even remotely not in S tier is how broken she's been over the past couple of months. Granted, she's been tuned down a bit, and she's come down a little bit, but really hard to play. You have to hit your shots, you have to hit your cooldowns, your positioning can be punished. And Ana players also need to realize that nade is such a powerful ability that like suiciding forward, or even like these like Ana Lucio strats where you rotate around Brawl cores to hit them, like to try like counterplay dive against Brawl. Using nade in more like aggressive versus a defensive context, because most support players have this defensive like live to as long as you can to get value by like supporting mindset. Like being more selfish is hard with Ana, but like super valuable. Being selfish with like a Lucio is just like Reddit Lucio, like whatever, you just speed around the map. But with Ana, it's way more harder and way more deliberate and controlled. And to get to that point, you have to be a very strong player. But that's where the value ceiling of the character really starts, the skill ceiling really starts to show itself. So for Ana, I think she gets the bump over Lucio by like a couple of spots, if not one spot. I'll do one spot for brevity's sake, because I already have her there. But very hard character, in my opinion, the hardest support in the game. Rejoice Ana players. She is good, she is hard, she is fun, she is all the above. Okay. Sojourn. Sojourn, let's do bottom of S for Sojourn. I think she's really simple. She doesn't have the support player. Like supports have to, Lucio and Ana have to have a DPS centric mindset in some cases, but also still have to worry about supporting team and team context, which makes them harder from a game sense perspective. Versus Sojourn is just go on an angle, shoot, or like stay behind your shield tank and shoot, and then get a railgun shot and kill someone, and next fight and do the same thing again. And yes, disruptor shot is like hard to use, but like still, like it's not that hard to think about doing the play. But all of the difficulty from Sojourn comes from landing that railgun, because you are not doing well if you're not landing your railgun. Other hit scans, they can body shot bandit all day, and they have way more forgiveness in their like Cassidy the neutral is way more forgiving than Sojourn. That's why even in situations where Cassidy is not as meta as Sojourn is, you will see players opt to go Cassidy because his neutral value and his like ability to pump out damage is so much better than Sojourn and way more forgiving than Sojourn, because it's not live or die by landing your right click. But if you do hit the right click, extreme reward on Sojourn, which makes it so that like the higher up you go, the better players get at landing that shot, the more they will justify picking her over the characters that are more consistent but not as high peaks, right? Coupled that with she has an ultimate that just buffs what she's already doing that's hard, tells me that she is really difficult to play. And yes, for those people who are wondering in the comments who are very perceptive and have been watching this from start to finish, or at least watch the Kiri section, I said that Kiri TP having 2 charges is what bumps her down a tier. I can't say the same thing for Sojourn, because her neutral is way harder than Kiriko's. Her neutral, the way that she plays the game normally is so much harder that it almost like justifies her having to get 2 slides. And even then, 2 slides is way worse and also nerfed after that. I never remember 2 slides got nerfed because of the slide distance nerf. Then Kiri TPing 2 times in a span of 4 seconds and only incurring an 9 second cooldown because of that. I think it is unbelievable. So yeah, Sojourn in S tier, low S tier, is very close to being bumped down to A solely off of you only have to worry about being good at mechanics and not really positioning all that much. But still, I think like you have to hit your shots on this character, and it's not. There are some situations with like a character like Widow where you still, even with the advent of perks and bans and all this like stuff so that makes her innately weaker, find a situation where you can just scope in and kill someone randomly. Whereas with Sojourn, you have to be a little bit more deliberate in your positioning. And you still have left click, right? Like this is without talking about left click, this is without talking about disruptor. So there is that. And how do you weave the abilities together, which with Widow is just point and shoot, but hard. With Sojourn, it's also point and shoot, but new game plus version of that. We have Echo next. Echo, for some reason, on some lists, is not in the S tier. I don't understand why. I think she's super hard to play. I think you have to have a baseline competency of every single character in the game with her ultimate. Actually, no, that's not fair. To be at peak with Echo, let me rephrase that. To be at peak with Echo, you need to know every ultimate or use every character in the game. But even with a baseline level of competency with Echo, you will need to know probably at least half the roster, because half the cast are good copies and situationally are better than the other. And that alone would put her in a high B without factoring in her neutral, without factoring in how squishy she is now that she's 225, and without factoring the gameplay loop, and that she's a flyer and susceptible to hit scans and bad matchups against some characters. So yeah, a lot of execution. Really, really tough against characters that are really strong. Really niche and unique playstyle. And one of the most skill expressive, intensive ults to use in the game. Coupled with a flanker playstyle that is, again, unconventional. Makes her S tier for me. And what puts her above Pharah is that she's way harder mechanically, in my opinion. So, yeah. I think she's S tier, very low S. Because there is some debt forgiveness here. Let's be real. Ult is insanely broken of an ult. And Flight is a decently low cooldown, and she has fantastic poking, as opposed to the next character that you're going to see in Genji, my main, who I do not think is the hardest character in the game, but I do think he is awfully close. And then by nature, that would put Ball at number 2. So, or number 3, kind of interchangeable. So Genji. Genji is hard to play. He is a flanker shotgun character, but a little bit of flexibility because he has the poking in his left click. Flexibility in positioning with wall climb, but he lives and dies by getting resets and has a very feast or famine playstyle. There is a way to play Genji safe, but I don't think it's that good. Playstyle drastically changes from game to game depending on who you're playing with, whether or playing against. He plays a lot differently in brawl compositions, hybrid compositions, than he does in dive. He also plays differently depending on the map. He does the whole hard dive, soft dive thing that tanks have to think about. He also has to poke. Well, doesn't have to, but like kind of has to poke. His ultimate is difficult to use. It is ultimate is kind of a character in of itself, kind of. He at baseline level of competency is one of, if not the hardest character in the game besides Wrecking Ball. I think. Fuck, but then that makes. Oh, this is tough. I think this is hard. This is really hard ranking these 3. I think because this is like these are hard lock 3 hardest characters in the game. In my opinion, maybe you could throw Ana as a number like a 1B or 1D in this case, but like I don't know. I think those are hard lock 3. Genji, I think, is not as forgiving as Tracer and Ball, which gives him an edge. And mechanically, he is extremely difficult, but he's not as difficult as the 2 in front of him. And that is what makes him not at 1 and 2. Because now we're getting to the point where, like, the character's game plans are super, like, good and hard, but also the mechanics are super hard too, which kind of makes the S tier straightforward. So that's Ball. We'll segue into Ball with that. I think Ball, you have to take super specific duels. There is a way that you can play Ball kind of brain dead and just like pile drive, and there is like an exploitable gameplay loop. But again, based on level of competency, I think is above that stage. You have to use like pile drive tech. You have to use not slingshot. What's it called? That's Mercy. What's it called? The bounce tech, the pinball. Use Fireball properly. Know the matchups where we should pile drive versus when we should play for Fireball. A lot of Wrecking Ball players. There was one Wrecking Ball player that I encountered. Hi, Cody, if you're watching this. There are a lot of Wrecking Ball players that I've encountered that are not good with their gun because they're so hyper focused on the ball aspect of the kit. Cutting off chokes with Minefield. All this stuff is game sense and not that hard. But where Ball gets hard is all of this tech. There's so much tech. And so many creative ways to use grapple hook on different maps and glitches. Like there's this like hamster guy on Twitter who has crazy rollout stuff with Ball. His Ball one tricks chasm is insane mechanically, and like and also he is the epitome of a character being hard because they're unique. there is no character in the game that plays like Ball does. And I think that justifies his spot on my list. And number 1, to no one's surprise, is Tracer. I don't have to explain that too much. If you want me to go more in depth, there is a video on my channel that I will link below. Ding, 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 ding. And on screen, little flash, the thumbnail, where I go a little bit more in depth on why I think Tracer is the best design hero in the game. And also one of the hardest, if not the hardest. In my list, I've got her as the hardest. She is forgiving and unforgiving at the same time. Now, what do I mean by that? You have 3 blinks, hypermobile. You have recall major perk that gives you 2 blinks when you recall. And you have recall. So you're super duper giga mobile. And you have a get out of jail free card. The only issue is you pop like a balloon if anyone breathes on you, so much as breathes on you. And coupled with the fact that your value is directly contingent on how good you are as a player with her. Directly. There is no cheese with Tracer. It does not exist. She is one of the most honest characters in the game. One of. Not the most. You know, there is a sword cyborg ninja in the game. But she is one of the most honest characters. You have to get your value to win. You can't just braindead accomplish value by existing or by like exploiting a gameplay loop. You have to track really, really well in a game where players are moving all around. There's a monkey here jumping all like this, and then there's a Sombra there, and there's so much to keep track of, and you're super squishy, and it's easy for you to die. And it's also, in the neutral sense, it can be easy to underperform as Tracer because she's so reliant on that 1v1, and she's so reliant on, like, she can tank shred, but she has to be close range to do it. You're on the razor's edge constantly inside of the enemy team, constantly on the verge of death. You're directly, to get really competent with Tracer, or even baseline level competency as Tracer, you are towing the line between value and death. All of the time. All of the time. And this is without mentioning Pulse Bomb, which is one of the most valuable abilities, also link below. But one of the hardest abilities to use because it is, again, directly contingent on player skill. You have to land it, and if you don't land it, there's a noticeable difference in how good or bad you are as a Tracer and how much you're doing. And to be competent with Tracer, in my opinion, would be 40% or higher pulse bomb accuracy. And in higher elos, that is not an easy feat. You have to be a sugar-free doomed Zomba, Zira type DPS player to achieve 45% pulse accuracy in high elo, assuming you're not braindead pulsing a tank, right? And even then, it's not that easy, and you can still get Suzu'd, and there's like a billion things that counter you, and flankers are really difficult, and you get one tapped all of the time. And I'm super impressed with Tracers that have low deaths because it is so easy to die 7 or 8 deaths per 10 on this character, especially if you play support. Support players, you know what I'm talking about. Playing Tracer feels like a nightmare because you just, yes, you're good at playing your life, but also mechanics tend to take a little bit of a hit at support, and you really feel it, and tank even to an extent. And when you swap to a character like Tracer, you really, really feel how hard it is to get these crazy one clips, how hard it is to get those like good damaging clips off while not dying, how hard it is to manage your blinks. Granted, recall perk makes it a little bit easier. How hard it is to get a good recall location, how hard it is to land pulse bomb, how hard it is to stage, how hard is it to time, or it is to time flanks with other DPS or tanks and get out scot-free, how hard it is to play around health packs, how hard it is to play how the character on specific maps against specific comps, against specific this, against specific that. Like, oh my god, there's just so much to think about. There's so much to think about. She has a simple game plan, but there's just so many steps that you have to take to execute it from a micro and macro perspective. That is what makes the character difficult. Super simple. Go in, blink, get a kill, get out, harass for a little bit, get in, get out, pulse bomb, blink in, pulse bomb, get out. But how you do it, when you do it, why you do it, if you do it, is what makes the character, in my opinion. And Unforgiveness, and 175, the hardest character in Overwatch. And that's going to be it for this tier list video. Very long one. I think we're at like I don't see the time here, but if I had to guess, it'd be a couple hours. Like, I think I did this at like 3, and now it's 5:30. Like, I've been here for a while. So, yeah, you guys have a good one. Let me know in the comments if you like more tier list style videos like this. It's always fun for me to make these because it gets discussion going in the comments between viewers, and also you get to see my side of the story. You get to see my opinion, and then we get to directly clash because you hate Lars and you think that he's wrong, and you think that he is a horrible human being because he put your character, your main, in a spot that you didn't like. So now I'm gonna get flamed in the comments, and I will be hearting your comment anyway, and I will be super happy to hear that feedback and your opinion, or I will trash your opinion. In the comments, will trash your opinion because you suck and we're better than you. All right, have a good one. I'm kidding.